Hi, today we're going to talk about foundation mudsills, specifically on older foundations. We're in a San Francisco home that's circa 1931. So this is a battered foundation. Again, these are foundations where the interior wall of the foundation is sloped inwards and the exterior wall of the foundation is a vertical plane, and they meet and have a top on them that the mudsill fits on. The problem with battered foundations is basically that the load is pushed to the exterior side of the foundation, and it's loaded kind of eccentrically, so they always want to fail and rotate towards the outside wall. Consequently, when you inspect these kind of foundations, you always want to look at the corners because that's typically where they'll crack. That and sometimes in the middle, but quite often you see cracks at the corners as the corners try to peel apart, basically. What we're going to talk about today, though, is the way the mudsill is set. In this foundation, the mudsill is was actually placed while the concrete was still wet. We didn't have the kind of footings that we have today. The battered footings were used up until probably the late 1950s, and then we switched to more conventional shallow spread footings. But today, we actually take great care to make sure that the top of the concrete is actually nice and level, and the bolts are set ahead of time. We pour the concrete with the bolts set in place. That wasn't the way it was done back in the 30s. What they would actually do is form it up, pour the concrete, and then after they'd battered on it, banged on it with hammers and whatnot, and settled out the air bubbles, they would place the mudsill and force the mudsill down onto the wet concrete with, if there were bolts, the bolts in place then, and actually wet set the bolts. What would happen then is they battered the mudsill down, is you would get the mudsill recessed into the concrete. You can see that going on here, where we're actually got concrete and it's failed concrete, and then the mudsills below it. The problem with all this has become that these older concrete mixes are very porous, so they wick water up. The water not only does it degrade the concrete like it has here, but it also wicks and saturates the bottom of the mudsill that's concealed. You can look at this and it looks fine from the top side. If we start banging on it a little bit though, that sounds pretty solid. We get over here, very hollow. So you want to be tapping on these things, especially when you see heavy efflorescence on the foundation that goes all the way up, especially when the mudsill is actually buried like it is here. The chances are that the bottom side of that mudsill has gotten exposed to water over, in this case, the last 70 years, and it's caused dry rot. The dry rot that you wouldn't see normally. I mean, not that we're going to be probing, but if you probe that, we don't get any kind of softness yet. That thing's just a hollow piece of wood. Not bad over here. So anyway, that's it for today.